The morning air at Murtala Muhammed International Airport in Lagos felt heavy with excitement. Inside the crowded departure hall, 20 secondary school students stood together wearing matching blazers with the emblem of Royal Crest International High School printed proudly on their chests. They were some of the brightest physics students in Nigeria. That morning, they were traveling to Cape Town, South Africa for an international science practical program where young scientists from around the world would perform advanced experiments. Parents hugged their children tightly. Teachers checked documents nervously. Students laughed, took pictures, and shared snacks while waiting to board their flights. For most of them, it was just an exciting school trip. But for one girl standing quietly near the window, it meant everything. Her name was Amaka Okorie. Amaka was not like the others. She had no wealthy parents waiting beside her, no expensive luggage, no camera to record the moment. Amaka was an orphan from Enugu. 7 years earlier, a tragic road accident had taken both her parents in a single night. Since then, she had grown up in a small church orphanage with cracked walls, old beds, and a generator that rarely worked. Life there had never been easy. Sometimes the children ate only once a day. Sometimes rain leaked through the roof while they slept. But Amaka had something rare, something powerful, a mind that seemed to understand the language of science. While other children played outside, Amaka spent hours studying the stars. She counted the seconds between lightning and thunder during storms. She calculated the distance of airplanes crossing the sky. At the age of 14, she solved a physics problem during a national science competition that shocked judges across the country. Soon after, she received a full scholarship to attend Royal Crest International High School in Lagos. But life at the elite school had not been easy either. Many of her classmates came from wealthy families. They arrived at school in luxury cars. They carried the newest smartphones. They wore expensive watches. Amaka arrived with a small suitcase and borrowed textbooks. Some students admired her intelligence. Others whispered cruel things behind her back. The orphan girl. The scholarship case. She probably doesn't even know how to travel. But Amaka never argued. She never complained. She simply studied harder. Because deep down she believed one thing. Education was her only path to a different life. That morning at the airport, when the boarding announcement finally echoed through the hall, the students grabbed their bags and moved toward the gate. Amaka walked slowly behind them. Her heart was beating fast. She had never been inside an airplane before. Minutes later, flight AZ704 began boarding. The students found their seats. Some were already recording videos. Others joked about the experiments waiting for them in South Africa. Amaka sat quietly beside the window. When the plane finally began moving along the runway, her fingers tightened slightly around the armrest. The engines roared, the aircraft accelerated, and within seconds, the ground slowly fell away beneath them. Lagos shrank into tiny buildings and winding roads. Clouds surrounded the plane like endless white mountains. Amaka pressed her forehead gently against the window. For the first time in her life, she was flying through the sky. It felt magical, peaceful, beautiful, but several thousand meters above the Atlantic Ocean. Something invisible was waiting. 3 hours into the flight, the first alarm sounded inside the cockpit. At first, it was just a small warning signal, but within seconds, multiple alarms began screaming. Navigation screens flickered, radar signals vanished.
Everyone stay in your stations!
Faster dropping, balloon now!
The autopilot system shut down without warning. The captain immediately grabbed the controls while the co-pilot tried contacting air traffic control. Lagos Control, this is flight AZ704 requesting assistance. Only silence answered. The radio produced nothing but static. Outside the aircraft, the sky had changed. Dark, swirling clouds surrounded the plane. Lightning flashed inside them like veins of fire. The aircraft had unknowingly entered a powerful electromagnetic storm system. Inside the cabin, the seatbelt sign suddenly lit up.
Signal's gone! Flight 238 just vanished!
The logs, any comms? Nothing, it's just gone.
Scramble a search, now!
The plane shook violently. Students looked around in confusion. Then fear began spreading. The turbulence grew worse. The aircraft dropped suddenly several meters before stabilizing again. One student screamed. Another began crying. A teacher tried to calm them. "It's normal turbulence," he said. But even he did not sound convinced. In the cockpit, the captain's face was tense. Every navigation system had failed. Even the satellite communication system had stopped responding. The plane had become blind in the sky. Within minutes, Flight AZ-704 disappeared completely from global tracking systems. To the outside world, it was gone. Hours passed. The storm slowly faded. The plane was still flying, but the crew had no idea where they were. Fuel levels were still safe for the moment, but without navigation they could not determine their direction. Inside the cabin, panic slowly began replacing excitement. Students whispered to each other nervously. One boy asked quietly, "Are we lost?" No one answered. Night eventually fell outside the windows. The aircraft continued flying through endless darkness. Back in Nigeria, confusion had already begun spreading. When the aircraft failed to arrive in Cape Town on schedule, airport authorities became concerned. Phone calls were made, radars were checked again, but flight AZ-704 had disappeared from every system hours earlier. Soon the news reached government authorities. By midnight, television stations across Africa interrupted their programming with breaking news. Nigerian student flight missing over the Atlantic Ocean. Parents rushed to the airport in panic. Some collapsed in tears. Phones rang endlessly. Search operations began immediately. Military aircraft were deployed. Satellites scanned the ocean. Rescue planes flew across thousands of kilometers of empty sky, but there was no signal, no wreckage, no emergency beacon, nothing. It was as if the plane had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, inside the aircraft, the situation was growing worse. The food supplies had been prepared for a 5-hour flight, but now the plane had been in the air far longer. Water had to be rationed. Students grew weak and frightened. Some prayed quietly. Some cried every night. Days passed slowly inside the cabin. Time seemed to stop. Outside the windows, the sky never seemed to change. Blue during the day, black and endless at night. On the 5th day, the final packaged meals were gone. Teachers tried dividing the remaining water carefully. One student whispered late at night, "Are we going to die here?" No one had the courage to answer. Even the crew looked exhausted. Hope was fading, but while others cried or slept, Amaka spent long hours staring out the window. She watched the stars, every night, carefully, silently. Something about them seemed wrong. The stars were not positioned where they should have been if the plane was still moving south toward Cape Town. Night after night, she observed the sky carefully. Then she began writing calculations in a small notebook. She measured time between sunsets. She estimated speed using the aircraft's visible indicators. She studied the movement of the constellations. Slowly, a shocking realization formed in her mind. The storm had not simply damaged the plane's systems, it had pushed the aircraft far off course. They were not drifting south, they were drifting northwest, toward the upper coast of West Africa, possibly near Senegal. After 10 days in the sky, Amaka finally gathered the courage to approach the cockpit. The captain looked tired but listened carefully as the quiet girl explained her calculations. At first he hesitated, but the numbers were precise, logical. Fuel levels were dangerously low. If they did nothing, the plane would eventually run out of fuel over the ocean. The captain took a deep breath. Then he made a decision. He trusted the girl. Slowly, he adjusted the aircraft's direction using manual controls. The plane turned slightly. Inside the cabin, no one noticed. Hours passed. Students waited silently. Then suddenly, a faint sound crackled through the cockpit radio. A voice, weak, distant, but real. "Unidentified aircraft, identify yourself." The captain nearly shouted with relief. "This is flight AZ-704 from Lagos." There was a pause on the radio. Then the shocked response came. "Flight AZ-704. We have been searching for you for 12 days. Soon after, land appeared beneath the clouds. Green coastline stretched across the horizon. Runways became visible in the distance. The aircraft slowly descended toward Dakar International Airport in Senegal. When the wheels finally touched the ground, many students burst into uncontrollable tears. They had survived 12 days lost in the sky. Across the world, families watching the news cried with relief. It felt like witnessing a miracle. Later, investigators asked the captain a simple question. How did you find your way back? The captain did not hesitate. He simply pointed toward Amaka, the quiet orphan girl from Enugu.
Amaka used physics and star navigation to guide us safely.
I just did what I had to do.
The scholarship student everyone once ignored. The girl who used nothing but physics and the stars to guide a lost aircraft back to Earth. And from that day forward, the world would never forget her name. Amaka Okori, the girl who refused to give up, even when the sky itself seemed endless.